This is dementia. Along with high blood pressure, depression, raised levels of stress, and even hallucinations, human ailments we know are caused by diet, heredity, and perhaps environmental factors. But did you know that isolation in many different forms can also lead to these debilitating conditions? Today, I want to inform you of the effects of isolation, who we must be cautious of it affecting, and how to better cope and even fix the issue. Extreme cases of isolation, such as those experienced by imprisoned individuals in solitary confinement, have described mind-altering hallucinations that start with geometric spheres on points of light and then get stronger. Take, for example, the story of Sarah Shroud, who in 2009 was captured and arrested by Iranian troops as she and two friends were hiking straight onto the border of Iran. Shroud said she experienced terrifying hallucinations during her solitary confinement in a Tehran prison for 410 days. In a 2011 New York Times article, she said, in the peripheral of my vision, I began to see flashing lights, only to jerk my head around to find nothing there. At one point, I heard someone screaming, and it wasn't until I felt the hands of a friendlier guards on my face trying to relieve me that I realized the screams were. That's an extreme example. However, studies have also shown there's a connection between the feelings of or even the perception of being isolated and disconnected from others to doubling the chance of developing the type of dementia linked to Alzheimer's disease. The study's co-author, Dr. David Bennett, said that it turns out people who have this feeling of being socially isolated are at a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. He said, "We are talking about a tendency to feel isolated and alone in the world. You can have a small network and not feel isolated, or you can have a large network but don't know how to connect and feel isolated." Another study at the University of Chicago Medical Center, which used mice as its subjects, found that isolation could actually increase cancerous tumors. And then another study by Dr. James House with the Institute of Social Research and the University of Michigan went as far to show that isolation is a risk factor for disease on par with smoking and obesity. So what have we learned about the coping mechanisms for isolation, both in extreme cases and those of loneliness? One coping mechanism we know is anthropomorphism. That's a mouthful. What is it? A great example of it is shown in the movie Castaway, in which Tom Hanks plays a man stranded on a beautiful island, yet completely alone for years with his only companion, a volleyball named Wilson. Wilson is an extreme example of anthropomorphism, the personifying factor of an inanimate object such as a volleyball. By making the volleyball look human, Hank's character was able to better cope with isolation and loneliness he felt on the island. Researchers have found that taking an inanimate object is a valid and effective coping mechanism. We actually do. We do this every day, whether it be talking to our dogs, our computer, and even our cars. It is positive and helpful, and I think this is a valuable in this finding our own inanimate objects to integrate with technologies. What about the coping mechanisms for milder cases of being lonely or being isolated? For many elderly, being in a nursing home is a very lonely situation. Oftentimes, the effects of loneliness will exacerbate the physical decline of their health and well-being. Visiting the elderly, whether in their homes or in their nursing homes, is an important way we can make a huge difference in their quality of life. We know that physical conversations over the phone or face-to-face conversations go a long way in making someone feel connected and socially engaged. Of course, for the elderly, though, this can be a real struggle, and one that we as a society need to recognize and address. My statement would be that in order to make this amazing technology useful for the elderly, we must modernize it even more to the point it wouldn't take any effort on their side of the communication to work it. Perhaps a hologram, like in the movies, where any person of choice can virtually visit them and make it easy and real use of helping them by adding visual demonstrations with little to no effort of them having to accept a call. Just like that. Small acts of kindness, as well as real and physical conversations, are important to our well-being. We, as humans, are social creatures and have an innate desire to connect with one another. Let's try to remember this as we continue along this digital age of echoes and smartphones. Thank you.